Welcome to the Godot BootCamp lesson on incrementing user statistics. In this lesson, we're going to modify the Godot example game to increment the 3 user statistics that we defined in a previous lesson. To do that, we need to use the increment user stats request. In the API reference, let's take a closer look at the increment user stats request. This request takes in just one parameter, a JSON formatted string that contains the statistic names and how much the values have been incremented by. Taking a look at the JSON example response, notice that the updated list of statistics is returned. We'll go over the significance of this in a few moments. Scroll up and notice that there are complex operations that are supported with this request. Click the statistics grammar link. These complex operations can be applied to both global statistics and user statistics. We won't be using any of these operations in this lesson, but it's good to know that they exist. Once you're done scrolling through the complex statistic operations, navigate to the design portal. We're going to try out the increment user stats request in the Cloud Code API Explorer. Click Execute to authenticate. Then from the service drop-down list, select Player Statistics. From the operation drop-down list, select Read All User Stats. Click Execute to make the request. In the response, copy the statistic names and their values. From the operation drop-down list, select Increment User Stats. In the parameters section, paste in the statistics we just copied and format them with some data. Click Execute to make the request. Notice in the response, the statistics have been updated and their current values have been returned. In your game or app, it's important to update the list of statistics with the values that the response returns. You'll see an example of this shortly when we implement the increment user stats request in the Godot example game. Let's increment the user stats one more time. In the parameters section, format the statistic values and then click Execute. Notice in the response that the values we just incremented the statistics by were added to the existing values. Open Visual Studio Code and navigate to the network.cs file. Declare a pair of public callback delegates for handling the increment user stats response. Notice that the completed callback delegate has a parameter of type reference to a list of statistic objects. You may be wondering why we need to return a list of statistic objects when we increment them. The reason is that brainCloud has the de facto master list of statistics and our game does not. When a statistic gets incremented, it's possible that the user is logged in from 2 separate devices and playing the game. brainCloud can keep track of the statistic increments for both users, and obviously this is something the client code can't do. This is why we're going to update the client's list of statistics on an increment request. The same logic would of course apply to global statistics as well. Scroll down near the bottom. Above the handle authentication success method, declare a public method called increment user statistics. This method takes in a dictionary of increment data and the callback delegates as the parameters. In the body, check to see if the user is authenticated. If the user is not authenticated, format an error message and then invoke the handle request error method, passing in the error message and the error delegate as the arguments. If the user is authenticated, declare success callback lambda. In the body of the lambda, log the response data. Then parse the response data and get the data object. From the data object, parse the statistics data. Invoke the parse statistics method, passing in a reference to a statistics data object as the argument. Add the list of statistic objects to the statistics manager. Finally, if the success callback delegate is not null, it will be invoked, passing in a reference to the list of statistic objects as the argument. Next, declare failure callback lambda. In the body of the lambda, format an error message, and then invoke the handle request error method, passing in the error message and the error delegate as the arguments. Invoke brainCloud's Player Statistics Services increment user stats request, passing in the dictionary of data increments and the success and failure callback lambdas as the arguments. Save the file and then navigate to the statisticsmanager.cs file. Declare a public method called getIncrementsDictionary. This method will return a dictionary of all the statistics names and their increment values. In the body, safety check that the mStatistics member variable is not null. Then declare a dictionary called data and instantiate it. Loop through all the statistic objects and add the name and increment values to the data dictionary. Then return the data dictionary. In the event that the mStatistics member variable is null, this method will return null. Save the file and then navigate to the game.cs file. Scroll down and find the onChipHasExploded method. In this method, we're going to get the games played statistic object from the statistics manager and apply an increment to it. Then we're going to invoke the statistics manager's getIncrements dictionary method. And then we'll invoke the network's increment user statistics method, passing in the increments dictionary as the argument. We're only going to call the increment user statistics method when the game ends. It doesn't make sense to keep sending statistic increment data to brainCloud every time a statistic increases, but rather when our game ends, which in this case is when the ship explodes. Then all the increment values will be sent to brainCloud. There's another situation that can cause the game to end, and that's when the boss is defeated in horde mode. In the onBoss has exploded method located below, we're going to get the games played statistic from the statistics manager and apply an increment to it. Invoke the statistics manager's getIncrements dictionary method. Then invoke the network's increment user statistics method, passing in the increments dictionary in as the argument. Now all that's left to do is to increment the enemies killed statistics and the asteroids destroyed statistics in the appropriate locations in the code. Save the file and then navigate to the ship.cs file. Scroll down and find the onAreaEntered method. In the highlighted if statement, get the asteroids destroyed statistic object from the statistics manager and apply an increment to it. Below that, in the highlighted if statement, get the enemies killed statistic object from the statistics manager and apply an increment to it. Save the file and then navigate to the enemy.cs file. Scroll down and find the onAreaEntered method. In the highlighted if statement, get the enemies killed statistic object from the statistics manager and apply an increment to it. Save the file and then navigate to the asteroid.cs file. Scroll down and find the onAreaEntered method. First, check to see if the laser color is blue. Only the player ship shoots blue lasers. All the enemy ships shoot red lasers. If the laser color is blue, get the asteroid destroyed statistic object from the statistics manager and apply an increment to it. Save the file and then navigate to the boss.cs file. Scroll down and find the onAreaEntered method. In the highlighted if statement, get the enemies killed statistic object from the statistics manager and apply an increment to it. Save the file and then compile the code. If the code compiles successfully, open the Godot editor. Run the game. On authentication, navigate to the brainCloud menu and open the statistics dialog so we can check the current statistic values. This user hasn't played yet, so the values are all 0. Let's change that. Close the dialog, and then from the main menu, click Endless Mode. To save time, video playback has been sped up. The player has exploded and the game is over. The user statistic increments are then sent to brainCloud. Then in the response, brainCloud sends back the updated user statistic values. Checking the brainCloud statistics dialog, you'll notice that the statistics have been updated. Close the dialog and then close the brainCloud dialog. Click New Game. Again, to save time, the video playback has been sped up. The player has exploded and the game is over. Let's check the brainCloud statistics dialog. You'll notice that the user statistic values that we just submitted were added to the existing user statistic values on the brainCloud server. How to set up achievements is the next lesson in the Godot BootCamp.